We're live.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Fridays with Sue and Steph. Today, we are so thrilled to be back with our favorite therapist, Dr. Suzanne Schneps, who is gentle. No matter what we throw her way, we leave feeling better about parenting our teenagers. So thank you for being here with us, Suzanne.
You're welcome.
And we are going to talk today about, it's a big moment for people who have especially their oldest in college, and they're coming home for a break, and that is disruptive. So, hi, Takesha. I hope I pronounced that right. Hi, back to you. So they've changed in the time that they've been at college, and our houses have changed. Like there's a certain closing of the circle that happens, and you start to you're adjusted. Now, you might have wept so deeply when you sent your kid off, and then now there's this adjustment the other way. So what's your best advice for parents right now who are about to have their kids show up?
Well, you started this, Sue, by saying, and everybody leaves feeling better. I'm not so sure this time because we don't know. We don't know who's coming home. But what we do know, they left knowing almost everything, and they're coming home knowing absolutely everything. And they've had all this freedom. And you didn't tell them what to do. And even if you were busy looking at them on Life 360, which they did hate, they did what they wanted. They went where they wanted. They woke up when they wanted, 3:00 in the afternoon. It's all good with them. They came home when they wanted, 4:30 in the morning. They slept with whoever they wanted, where they ever wanted. And now you want to say, you're in my house. And my house, we have rules. And I think it's giving some thought to what's reasonable. And what's reasonable is to have some communication about it and to say, we got to talk about this. What do you think you need? Because we always want to know what they need, right? And then you have to talk about what you need and how this is going to work and how it's going to feel the most comfortable.
Okay, so what about, as Sue said, if this is your oldest who has left for college, and you've got those younger ones at home, particularly, high schoolers, you've got that 11th grader, and now you've got this returning child who's going to want new rules, trying to keep the rules in the household, and they want the autonomy, as you just said, that they have had for 3 months plus probably. How does that work?
Well, it could work. Let me tell you how it could work. So it was not when they came home from college. It was 2 months before they went to college, and we changed the rules in our house for my then going off to college senior. And not to worry, her sister wrote down and kept a record of every single hour that she came home when it was a school night and when it wasn't. It must have been right before school was over, and the weekends, so that when she turned to senior, she produced the piece of paper and said, I assume that now I have these same privileges, so I could suggest that, and in a way, it's true. They're at a different place, and just like growing up, there were many, many times when the rules were different. Your sibling is, I don't know, 3-4 years older, and they got to do certain things. And then when it was your time, we looked at, and this is the big key, whether that was a good plan for you, because each one of you is an individual, because we know that it can't always be the same, but it's suggesting that you will look at it, and they're older.
I love that.
It's funny because each kid got more freedom earlier. And so your story is your daughter might have lost out actually by keeping track of what the older one got. Because in my house, that happened so much younger because it had already changed the rules. And by the next kid, they were, who knows what rules were abandoned by that kid. So that's happening in houses also, right?
Yes, absolutely. And the older one then would like to complain about it.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So here's one that I think is so hard. I mean, you even mentioned in your opening that kids are sleeping with whoever they want, which none of us want to hear. Our kids aren't doing that, of course. It's someone else's kid, but they have the freedom.
It is.
Yeah. But they have the freedom to do as they please with no parental oversight. And if you come home to my house and your significant other lives close by, how do I navigate like the freedom? I don't want them to be in my house having sex. I'm not comfortable with that. Maybe I am comfortable with that, but how do I just even navigate the fact that they've had all this freedom and now they're home? For some schools, they're home for 2 months. So what do we do with those relationships, and how do we set boundaries, and what's even reasonable?
Okay, I think you're allowed to set what boundaries feel comfortable to you. And I think that a place to start is, you're talking a significant relationship. These are also, let's be realistic, this is a generation that does a lot of random hookups. And we also have that out there. And I think that you have to decide what you're comfortable with. It is your home. And you can say, it's not something that that how they would run their house. Because of course they will run their house totally differently. But in your house, this is what feels okay. And you can appreciate it. It can be somewhat difficult, but this is how it's going to be in your house.
And what about the COVID overlay on that one? I mean, we've also got a pandemic going on. I mean, that brings a different layer to this very specific situation.
Yes, it does. And I think that that has to be laid out ahead of time. Many of them are used to being able to do whatever they wanted in terms of going places that you might not feel are, for lack of a better word, COVID safe. And I think there's a couple of approaches. One is that you say to them, I went to the library. I have a stack of quick tests here. And if you've been such and such a place, I need a quick test. I need to know it's okay. Two, I have a situation where there's a lot of vulnerability in the household, and of course we've all gotten much more comfortable doing things, but in this house that isn't going to work. And besides testing, in order to have the freedoms that the teen needs, they have to be masked because we have a vulnerable household. So it's trying to figure out what's your household in terms of its vulnerability, and what are ways that you can all agree that it will feel safe for everybody.
Okay.
And it'll be different from household to household. And that's the part we also have to understand.
Yeah. Can we kind of finish up that first one? Because that was a question from a parent that they sent in. So you say set the boundaries that you feel you're comfortable with, but I know the pit in my stomach that I get when I have that conversation with my kid and they throw a fit because they don't want, if they're going to come home to my house, they want the freedom and they have that power to say, well, I'm not coming home. So, or whatever else they're going to say to you in response to the way they've been living for the last few months. How do we not just tell them that these are the rules in our house, but successfully like sustain the relationship?
Okay, it's called that word that we all say all the time. It's called communication. It's starting out. I always want to hear what they need, what they want, what they're comfortable with. Many of them really don't want to have, we'll call them guests, sleep over. They don't. That's not really what they're comfortable with in your house. It doesn't feel good to them either. Okay, so let's start by communicating. What is it that you think you want, and then I think I want over here, and you want over here. What's your idea of how we can navigate that? They're intelligent. Remember, we got to remember even though their brains are developing, whatever, they have lots of ideas. If it comes from them, it always is better. Hear what their solution is, and many of them will have a solution that feels at least moderately comfortable. One thing that I've had a couple kids say to me is, well, the basement's a great place. You always let us hang down there. Are you okay with that? And are you okay? Could you skip coming to get the pop that you used to get? And that, and that can feel comfortable to. So it's like listening to what they suggest as a way. Now, one last thought. You said they say, well, I don't have to come home. What you don't want to get into over this is that great battle of wills, which goes something like this. They say, I don't have to come home. You say, I don't have to pay for college. I don't have to pay for your room and board. I don't have to. You will lose. Don't go there. Don't go there. Say, I want you home. Okay.
Mm.
What can we do to find a middle ground?
That's lovely. So let's talk about, we're sitting here talking about their transition, but enough about them. Let's talk about our transitions. So
It's really hard.
Exactly. So I stink at transitions. I stink at them. I hate them. I get a pit in my stomach. I think I have the flu, right? The whole thing. So, they leave and that's nauseating. And now they're coming home and that's nauseating. Like I'm nervous. And what does it feel like? I always think of dating myself, The Price is Right, that game where they take out the number and the rest of the numbers squeeze together. And now the number's coming home and you got to like find that place. And I'm nervous about it. Help. Like, how do we do that? Like without putting our own, mishigas on them.
Well, first of all, I think it's a totally understandable feeling, and you got to find your friends that are feeling it too, and you need your community. And this is where, you need your friends. You need your significant other. You need your spouse. You need other people to be able to talk about it. And you need to remember that you cannot be 100% the entertainment and make this be perfect. You have to have some time for yourself because you're used to a whole different rhythm. And how are you going to get that so you can go talk to your friend and say, you're just not going to believe what, blah, 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 because there's a gazillion things that you have to say. But it's keeping your community going, and it's keeping going the things that you do that have relaxed you. Really important to do that.
Okay, we've got a comment from Jessica Semmel with a question. Yeah, it's true. Kids are using Uber and walking everywhere, especially if they're in a city campus. And then they come back to a suburban house and they're calling their parents at 2 a.m. What do we do with that?
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, how do you feel about Uber and Lyft? Okay. And two, this is the balance question. This is where I will now talk out of two sides of my mouth. The first side is, listen, guys, I can pick you up until whatever time. I don't really care, 11:30 or midnight. And then you need to find a ride. But then there's the other side of my mouth. This is the one that I talk to every teen about, which is, I always want you to be safe. If you can't find anybody, don't text me. I don't hear it ever at night, but I will hear the phone. Call me if you're unsafe. I want to come and get you. Talk out of two sides of your mouth because you do want them to be safe. None of us want to have a terrible tragedy. But by the same token, what's your plan? I'm really not the driver at 2 a.m.
Great metaphor.
Suzanne, I think that's everything. I think it's not just this example. Okay, so I'm going to tell you my story is that I had this dream. It was so hard to let go of my kids when they left. And then that first time they came back, I kind of still had the vision of us going just back to the way things were. And that was a really bad expectation.
Fantasy.
What?
It was a fantasy. Go on.
Yeah. Okay. So why is that a fantasy? And how do we help mothers in particular right now who are going to, dreaming of that united family once again? How do we help them prepare right now?
We dispel the fact that that's how it's going to be. That's, you said you're going to leave feeling better. Well, forget that. Most often it's not going to be there. They're not coming back the same kid that left. They're coming back somebody who had a lot of freedom. They know a lot more. And, and they're wanting to connect more with their peers. Now, all of that being said, I think it's important that we talk about that this is not every kid. There will be the kid that comes home who doesn't want to be with anybody, who hated college and can't get enough of a parent. And we need to remember that they exist too. So while you're feeling one thing, your friend is feeling, I just wish they would go out with somebody. All they want to do, it's like enough with this family time. So you can have both, okay? But it's to remember that we, and try to read some of the cues of coming home and ask, what do you think it's going to be like? We could talk to these kids a little bit. Well, maybe not talk. Send them a text. So what you thinking? What are your thoughts about coming home? What would work for you?
I have a question that was not on our list, but it's occurring to me as we're sitting here. So a lot of time, if my husband were on this, he would be asking this question. So just I'll call it the courtesy. So like, you get the eye roll, like, well, just, text me when you're on your way home, and they're like, oh my God, like, is she kidding? Is he kidding? And we'll often say, and I don't know, I'm so curious your reaction. We'll often say like, I do it to dad. I do it to mom. Like, it's just a courtesy. Like, hey, I'm on my way home. Do you want me to grab anything? Or just, hey, I'm on my way home. Is that ridiculous for them to expect that kind of courtesy? You can say yes. I'm just curious.
Okay. I have pretty strong feelings about this because
Okay.
what I feel is when they, and what they'll tell you is when they go out on campus and that they will text, well, they don't have to, they all follow each other. They all know where they all are anyway. Okay. And so if I see that you're starting heading home, I'll say, could you get me a Starbucks? And to say, but this is how life works in this house. And if you can, I wouldn't go down in flames over it stuff.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth saying. It's the way your house operates.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll be so happy with you, Suzanne.
Okay.
So thank goodness I live for Tim to be happy with me.
So, what happens? These kids have had this experience of freedom, and you've got younger kids home, and you're thinking like, how do I protect these younger kids from these older experiences that this kid coming home has had? How do I kept my firstborn naive for a really long time. And now I want the same for these subsequent kids. And in walks someone talking about experiences that I don't really want to talk about.
Okay. There are some experiences that the younger kids are going to get to hear about that you never, when your wildest dreams, would have had the other ones here. Just like there were TV shows and movies they got to see. It's that rule thing. And then there are the things that are totally inappropriate, and it's okay to say, "Stop. We're not going here." And this generation that is coming home are very vivid describers of their intimate lives. And that is really not necessary for their younger siblings to have those intimate descriptions that they so freely are willing to give. And it's great. They're comfortable with their bodies, some of them, and blah, blah, blah. But it's really, their 11 and 12-year-old siblings don't need to hear it. And it's to say, stop, and it's to put out there, that's, that's being part of being mature. Okay. Which they hate. Okay. And they hate when you say that, but it is part of being mature. So that's why you're going to say it. Okay.
And can we preemptively say it?
Yeah, you can. You can.
Okay.
And I think it's coming at it from a positive point of view, because we always want to be positive with our children, right? It's, but seriously, it's to say something along the lines of, I just want to kind of go over some of the topics that, like, and they can be very, who knows what they are. Okay. Because they might need to be caught up a little bit that your sibling is kind of sensitive about blah, blah, blah. And, I really think that those are topics I'm glad to talk with you about. I love talking with you about them, but not when your siblings around.
That's great. So along those lines of maybe fantasies and keeping the communication open, give us some headspace. Like, what's a healthy space for us parents who have kids coming home, first time, second time, third time, to make it successful for everybody?
That you don't know what you're going to get. How's that? Okay. And that you're open to whoever comes home. Okay. To remind yourself a couple things. You love this person. Okay. You might not like some of the things they're doing, but you love the person. And this is part of growing up and being independent and becoming the person that they want to be. And that you can always say, we need to talk about it. We need, that's the piece we all miss. And you want to hear what they have to say to get yourself into that space, that you want to hear what they have to say and why they're thinking. You don't have to agree with them, but you want to hear what they have to say.
Dr. Suzanne Schneps, always unbelievable advice for us. Good headspace to move into this return of our children. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for being here with us, and have a great weekend.
You too.